Sophia Chen worked for the family company without knowing she was the adopted daughter of the biggest rival of the man she was about to meet. Damien Blackwell spent 10 years planning to destroy Chen Industries for revenge for his family's death. When they met in that bar, the chemistry was instant, explosive, irresistible. But he didn't know she was the daughter of the man he wanted to destroy, and she didn't know he was the billionaire orchestrating the downfall of the only family she knew. What happens when love collides with generational revenge, and neither knows they are enemies by inheritance? The numbers didn't add up. Sophia Chen stared at her computer screen for the 100th time, cross-referencing trading patterns that made her stomach churn. Someone was systematically short-selling Chen Industries stock, driving down the price with surgical precision. Working late again, Soph? Her colleague Marcus poked his head into her tiny cubicle. Someone's manipulating our stock. Look at these patterns. Sophia pointed to her charts. Coordinated attacks right before major announcements, insider knowledge of our quarterly projections. Marcus glanced around nervously. Maybe you should let the senior analysts handle this. I am handling it. Sophia's voice was sharp with frustration. I've been with this company for 3 years. I know these numbers better than anyone. What she didn't know was that Chen Industries had given her a job out of obligation, not merit. That the modest salary she lived on was a fraction of what she was entitled to. That the man she called Mr. Chen in the hallways was actually her adoptive father, who'd been protecting her identity since she was 3 years old. Across the city, Damien Blackwell stood in his penthouse office, surveying the financial battlefield he'd been orchestrating for months. Chen Industries stock had dropped 15% in the past quarter, right on schedule. "Sir, the final acquisition documents are ready for your signature," his assistant, Victoria, announced. "Not yet." Damien's jaw was granite. "I want them to feel the pressure a little longer. James Chen needs to understand what it's like to watch everything he built crumble." And the timeline? 2 weeks. By month's end, Chen Industries will be ours. Damien's smile was cold as winter. James Chen destroyed my family. Now, I'll destroy his legacy. What Damien didn't know was that James Chen had been carrying his own guilt for 23 years, that the industrial accident that killed the Blackwell family hadn't been sabotage, but a terrible mistake made by a young engineer named David Liu, Sophia's biological father, who died trying to fix his error. Sophia needed a drink. The numbers swirled in her head as she walked into Meridian, an upscale bar she couldn't usually afford. But tonight, watching her company bleeding money while she was powerless to stop it, she needed liquid courage. She'd barely ordered her wine when she felt him, a presence that made the air crackle with electricity. Sophia turned and found herself looking into the most intense green eyes she'd ever seen. Tall, dark hair slightly mussed like he'd been running his hands through it, wearing a suit that probably cost more than her monthly salary. But it was his smile that knocked her breathless, confident, slightly dangerous, like he knew secrets that could change the world. "Rough day?" he asked, gesturing to the empty stool beside her. "You could say that." Sophia studied his face, noting the sharp cheekbones, the way his eyes crinkled when he smiled. "You? Actually, it was a good day, but it's getting better." He extended his hand. "Damien." Sophia. His touch was electric, sending heat racing up her arm. "What do you do, Sophia?" Damien signaled the bartender for whiskey, neat. "Financial analysis, very boring stuff." She took a sip of wine, hyper-aware of how he was looking at her. "What about you?" "Business consulting. I help companies optimize their potential." The lie rolled smoothly off his tongue. "Optimize how?" Damien's smile turned predatory. "Find weaknesses, exploit opportunities, maximize profit. Sometimes that means removing inefficiencies." Something in his tone made Sophia shiver. Sounds ruthless. Business is ruthless, but it doesn't have to be cold. The way he said it, looking directly into her eyes, made her pulse quicken. They talked for hours. Damien was intelligent, funny, surprisingly knowledgeable about market analysis. Sophia found herself relaxing for the first time in weeks, laughing at his stories about difficult clients and corporate politics. "I should go," she said finally, checking her phone. "Early meeting tomorrow." "Don't." Damien's hand covered hers. "Have dinner with me, tomorrow night." "I don't even know your last name." "Morrison," Damien lied smoothly. "And you?" "Chen." The name that wasn't really hers, that she'd never questioned. Damien's grip on his glass tightened imperceptibly. Chen. Was she related to James? A daughter? Niece? This could be perfect. Inside information from the enemy's own family. "Chinese?" he asked carefully. "Adopted, actually. Don't know much about my biological family." Sophia's voice carried old pain. "Car accident when I was 3. The Chens took me in." Damien's mind raced. Adopted, so not blood family, but still potentially useful. And the way she said it, like she didn't quite belong. "I'm sorry, that must have been difficult." It was, but the Chens are good people. Gave me opportunities I never would have had otherwise. Good people, Damien thought bitterly. James Chen was a murderer who destroyed the Blackwell family and somehow convinced this beautiful woman he was a saint. "So dinner?" he pressed, pushing aside his darker thoughts. "I promise I'm more interesting than corporate restructuring." Sophia looked into those mesmerizing eyes and felt her resolve crumble. There was something magnetic about him, something that made her forget she was supposed to be careful with her heart. "Okay, one dinner. I'll pick you up at 7. As Sophia left the bar, she couldn't shake the feeling that Damien Morrison was going to change her life. She just didn't know he was planning to destroy it. Damien watched her go, his mind already working. Sophia Chen, adopted daughter of his enemy, with access to the company's financial data and clearly smart enough to spot the patterns in his attack. She could be the perfect weapon against James Chen. And if she happened to be beautiful, intelligent, and made his pulse race like no woman had in years, well, that would just make the job more pleasant. What Damien didn't anticipate was how much he'd enjoy her company, how her laugh would make him forget his carefully planned revenge, how looking into her trusting eyes would make him question everything he thought he knew about the Chen family. Tomorrow night would change everything for both of them. The only question was whether love could survive the collision of two hearts built on lies, revenge, and secrets that went back 23 years. Sophia spent the day distracted, replaying every moment with Damien. She'd never felt such instant chemistry with anyone. "Earth to Sophia," Marcus said, waving files. "Mr. Chen wants to see you." Sophia's stomach dropped. James Chen rarely called junior analysts unless something was wrong. "I understand you've been investigating irregularities in our stock performance," he said from behind his massive desk. "Yes, sir. Someone's manipulating our share price through coordinated short selling." "I need you to stop. Transfer those files to the senior team." "But Mr. Chen, I'm close to identifying the pattern." "Sophia." His voice was gentle but firm. "Trust me, some fights are bigger than they appear." Confusion gnawed at her as she left. Why stop investigating threats to his own company? Across town, Damien studied monitors displaying Chen Industries' financial moves. "Sir, someone's been tracking our shell companies," Victoria reported. Sophisticated analysis from a junior analyst, Sophia Chen. Damien's pulse quickened. The woman he was taking to dinner tonight. What's her access level? Limited, but she's brilliant. MIT graduate. If anyone could unravel our strategy, it's her. Handle it. Get her reassigned. Distracted. Whatever it takes. Even as he gave the order, something twisted in Damien's chest. At 7 sharp, Damien knocked on Sophia's door. She looked stunning in a black dress that hugged her curves perfectly. "You look incredible," he said, voice rough. He took her to Aurelius, a restaurant she'd only read about in magazines. "How did you get a table here?" she asked. "I know people." He'd bought out the entire restaurant for privacy. Over expensive wine, they talked about everything. Damien found himself genuinely captivated by her intelligence, her passion. "Tell me about your financial analysis work," he said. "Patterns," Sophia's eyes lit up. Right now, someone's orchestrating a systematic attack on my company's stock, coordinated short selling, timed to maximize damage. Whoever's doing it knows our business intimately. Damien's fork paused. And you're going to stop them? I was, until my boss told me to back off today. Sophia frowned. I think he's scared. This is an amateur. This is someone with serious resources. Maybe he's right. Maybe it's dangerous. I don't walk away from fights, especially when people I care about are getting hurt. Damien's chest tightened. She was fighting to protect James Chen, the man he'd sworn to destroy. What if the person you're fighting isn't the real enemy? He asked quietly. What do you mean? Damien hesitated on the edge of truth, then pulled back. Just be careful. Corporate warfare gets ugly. After dinner, they walked along the waterfront. When Damien stopped and turned to face her, Sophia's heart hammered. I can't stop thinking about you, he said intensely. Damien, I know this is crazy, but I've never felt anything like this. Neither have I. When he kissed her, it was electric, desperate and perfect. Sophia melted into him, pulling him closer. Come home with me, she whispered. They barely made it through her door before tearing at each other's clothes. They made love with surprising urgency, passionate, desperate, like they were memorizing each other. Afterward, Sophia curled against his chest. Stay. I shouldn't. Please. Looking at her trusting face, Damien knew he was lost. Okay. As Sophia slept, Damien stared at the ceiling. Tomorrow, he'd go back to destroying her company, but tonight, he'd allow himself to forget revenge and just feel what it was like to be in love. What he didn't know was that Victoria was already implementing his orders to have Sophia reassigned, removing her from any position where she could threaten their acquisition. The trap was closing, and neither realized they were about to become casualties of a war that started before they were born. Sophia woke to the smell of coffee and something that definitely hadn't been in her empty fridge. She padded to the kitchen in Damien's shirt, finding him at her stove, looking completely at home. Where did all this come from? She gestured at the spread of expensive groceries. Corner store was open early. Another lie. His assistant had delivered everything at dawn. Damien, this must have cost. He silenced her with a kiss that made her forget the question entirely. Let me spoil you a little. They ate breakfast like lovers who'd been together for years instead of one night. Damien couldn't keep his hands off her, constantly touching her arm, stroking her hair. I should go to work, Sophia said reluctantly. Call in sick. I can't afford to. Then I'll call in sick too. We'll spend the day together. Sophia laughed. You're crazy. About you? Absolutely. At Chen Industries, Marcus found Sophia's empty desk puzzling. She never missed work, especially with the stock investigation ongoing. Miss Chen called in sick, the receptionist explained when he asked. Meanwhile, Victoria was already moving pieces on the board. By lunch, Sophia would be transferred to a harmless department, her access to sensitive financial data revoked. Sophia and Damien spent the day wrapped around each other, talking and laughing and making love with increasing intensity. But when Sophia's phone buzzed with work calls, reality intruded. I have to take this, she said, seeing her supervisor's number. Sophia, where are you? There's been a restructuring. You're being transferred to market research effective immediately. What? Why? Orders from upstairs. Clean out your desk tomorrow. Sophia hung up, face pale. I've been transferred, removed from anything involving financial analysis. Damien felt guilt twist into stomach. Maybe it's for the best. Best, Sophia's voice rose. Someone's destroying my company, and they're sidelining the only person who figured it out? This isn't coincidence, Damien. This is them trying to silence me. Sophia, maybe you should just what? Give up? Let them win? She paced angrily. No, if they won't let me investigate officially, I'll do it on my own time. Damien's blood chilled. That's dangerous. So is letting corporate raiders destroy good people's livelihoods. Looking at her fierce determination, Damien realized he was falling for the one woman who could destroy everything he'd worked for. And worse, he was starting to care more about her than his revenge. "Sophia," he said, pulling her into his arms, "whatever happens with work, we have this. We have each other." "Do we?" She searched his face. "I feel like I'm falling for you, and it terrifies me because I barely know you. You know everything that matters. Do I? What's your last name again?" "Morrison." The lie tasted bitter now. "What company do you consult for?" "Various clients. Nothing as interesting as corporate espionage." Sophia studied his face, noting the way his jaw tightened when she asked questions. "There's something you're not telling me." "We all have secrets, Sophia." "That's not an answer." Damien cupped her face in his hands. "What I'm telling you is that whatever else is happening in our lives, this, us, is real. Can that be enough for now?" Looking into his eyes, Sophia saw truth mixed with something else. Fear? Guilt? But the way he touched her, looked at her, made love to her, that couldn't be faked. "Yes," she whispered, "for now." When Damien kissed her this time, it was desperate, almost apologetic, like he was trying to memorize the taste of her before everything fell apart. That night, as Sophia slept in his arms, Damien made a decision that would change everything. He pulled out his phone and texted Victoria, "Delay the acquisition. I need more time." For the first time in 10 years, revenge wasn't his top priority. The woman sleeping against his chest had become more important than destroying James Chen. But across town, forces were already in motion that neither love nor good intentions could stop. The corporate war was escalating, and soon both Sophia and Damien would be forced to choose between their hearts and their loyalties. The collision course had been set 23 years ago. Now it was just a matter of time before the truth destroyed everything they'd built together. 2 weeks into their relationship, Sophia had never been happier or more confused. Damien was everything she'd never known she wanted: passionate, intelligent, attentive. But the questions were multiplying, like how he always seemed to have inside knowledge about market trends, or why his consulting business never seemed to require actual work, or how he could afford to take her to restaurants that cost more than her monthly salary. "You're overthinking again," Damien said, tracing patterns on her bare shoulder as they lay in her bed Sunday morning. "Am I? Or am I finally thinking clearly?" Sophia turned to face him. "Tell me about your biggest client." Damien's hand stilled. "Why?" "Because I'm curious about the man I'm falling in love with." The words hung between them. Neither had said it directly before. "You're falling in love with me?" Damien's voice was soft, vulnerable. Terrifyingly so. Sophia's honesty was brutal. "Are you going to answer my question?" "My biggest client is complicated. Old family business, generational conflicts." "That's not an answer. It's the only one I can give right now." Sophia sat up, pulling the sheet around herself. "Damien, I need to tell you something. About work." Relief flooded his face at the subject change. "What happened?" "I've been investigating the stock manipulation on my own time, and I found something." Sophia's voice dropped. "The attacks aren't random. They're personal. Someone has a vendetta against James Chen specifically." Damien's blood turned to ice. "What makes you think that?" "The timing, the precision, the way they're designed not just to hurt the company, but to humiliate him publicly." Sophia's eyes were bright with discovery. "This isn't about money. This is about revenge." "Revenge for what?" "That's what I need to figure out. But Damien, whoever's doing this, they're going to succeed. Chen Industries can't survive much more of this pressure." Damien felt like he was drowning. Here was the woman he loved, brilliant and determined, unraveling the very revenge he'd spent a decade planning. And she was doing it to protect the man who'd destroyed his family. What if James Chen deserves it? The question slipped out before he could stop it. Sophia stared at him. "What? What if he's not the good man you think he is? What if he did something that warranted revenge? James Chen is one of the kindest men I've ever known. He took in an orphaned child, gave me opportunities, treated me like family. Maybe he was just guilty." "Guilty of what?" Sophia's voice was sharp now. Damien was walking a tightrope between truth and catastrophe. "I don't know. Sometimes people aren't who they seem." Like you? The accusation hit like a physical blow. Sophia, you won't tell me about your work, your clients, your past? You pay for everything, but claim to be a consultant. You know things about business that don't match your story. Sophia's voice was rising. So tell me, Damien Morrison, who are you really? Damien looked at her sitting there, beautiful and fierce and completely trusting despite her questions. He could tell her everything right now, explain about the Blackwell family, about the industrial accident, about his need for justice. But she'd never understand. She'd see him as the villain trying to destroy her family. "I'm someone who loves you," he said finally. "That's all that matters." "It's not enough anymore." The words cut deep. But before Damien could respond, Sophia's phone rang. James Chen's name appeared on the screen. "I have to take this," she answered, still watching Damien's face. "Mr. Chen, on Sunday, is everything okay?" Damien could hear the older man's voice, strained and tired. "Sophia, I need to ask you something, and I need complete honesty. Have you shared any information about our financial situation with anyone outside the company?" Sophia's eyes never left Damien's face. "No, sir, of course not." "Not even someone you're close to?" The question hung heavy with implication. Sophia felt something cold settle in her stomach. "Mr. Chen, is there something specific you're concerned about? We've discovered that our latest quarterly projections were somehow leaked before the board meeting. The short-selling attack started within hours. Someone with inside knowledge is feeding information to our enemies." Sophia's hand began to shake. "I understand. I'm not accusing you of anything, Sophia, but please be careful who you trust. This company, this family, we have more enemies than you know." After she hung up, the silence in the room was deafening. "Sophia," Damien started. "Get out." "Let me explain. Get out." Sophia's voice cracked. "I told you everything. Every concern, every discovery, every detail about the investigation. And someone's been using that information to destroy us. It's not what you think, isn't it?" Tears were streaming down her face now. "God, I'm so stupid. The expensive restaurants, the inside knowledge, the way you always steered conversations toward Chen Industries. You're working for them, aren't you? For whoever's trying to destroy my family." Damien felt his world crashing down. "Sophia, please listen. I trusted you. I fell in love with you. And you've been using me this entire time. That's not true. My feelings for you are real." "Your feelings?" Sophia laughed bitterly. "Was sleeping with me part of the job? Did you get bonus points for how thoroughly you fooled the naive girl?" "Stop." Damien's voice was raw. "Don't you dare cheapen what we have." "What we have? We have nothing. We never had anything. It was all a lie." Damien reached for her, but she flinched away, like his touch burned. "Sophia, I love you, more than I've ever loved anyone, more than my own life." "Then tell me the truth, right now. Tell me who you really are and who you're working for." Damien stared at her, the truth clawing at his throat. But telling her would mean losing her forever. She'd never forgive him for targeting James Chen, the man she considered family. His silence was answer enough. "Get out of my apartment. Don't call me, don't text me, don't ever come near me again." "Sophia, now." Damien dressed quickly, his heart shattering with every second of her silence. At the door, he turned back one last time. "I know you don't believe me, but I love you. That was never a lie." After he left, Sophia collapsed on her bed, sobbing until she had nothing left. The man she'd fallen for didn't exist. Damien Morrison was just another lie in a web of deception designed to destroy everything she cared about. What she didn't know was that Damien Blackwell was in his car outside her building, crying for the first time since his parents' funeral, knowing he'd just lost the only thing that mattered more than revenge. Tomorrow, the real war would begin. Damien didn't go home. He drove aimlessly through the city for hours, Sophia's words echoing in his head. "Get out. Don't ever come near me again." The pain in her voice when she'd realized he'd been using her information was like a knife to his chest. By dawn, he was sitting in his office, staring at the acquisition documents that would finalize Chen Industries' destruction. His signature was all that stood between James Chen and complete ruin. "Sir?" Victoria entered cautiously. "The lawyers are waiting for your signature on the final papers." Damien picked up his pen, then set it down again. "Cancel the acquisition." "Excuse me?" "You heard me. Cancel it. Call off the entire operation." Victoria stared at him like he'd lost his mind. "Sir, we've invested 10 years and hundreds of millions into this. We're hours away from victory." "It's not victory if I lose everything that matters." "The girl?" Victoria's voice was incredulous. "You're throwing away a decade of planning for someone you've known 3 weeks?" "Her name is Sophia, and yes, I am." Damien stood up, his decision crystallizing. "Send word to Chen Industries. Tell them the Blackwell Corporation is withdrawing all hostile actions, effective immediately." "Sir, please reconsider." "I said effective immediately." But it was too late. Victoria's expression changed, became calculating. "I'm sorry, sir, but I can't allow you to destroy this company's future over an infatuation." "What are you talking about?" "The board met this morning, emergency session. They were concerned about your compromised judgment regarding the Chen acquisition." Damien's blood chilled. "What did you do?" "What was necessary? The acquisition papers were signed an hour ago by board authority due to your temporary incapacitation. You can't do this." "It's done. Chen Industries will be ours by close of business today." Sophia sat in her tiny cubicle in the market research department, pretending to analyze consumer trends while her heart shattered over and over. Every time her phone buzzed, she hoped irrationally that it might be Damien with an explanation that would make everything okay. Instead, it was Marcus, his face pale as he approached her desk. "Sophia, we need to talk, privately." They found an empty conference room. Marcus looked like he was about to be sick. "What is it?" Sophia asked. "The acquisition went through this morning. We're being bought out." Sophia's world tilted. "By who?" "Blackwell Corporation." The name meant nothing to her, but the timing was devastating. How was that possible? The stock price was stabilizing. "Hostile takeover. They had enough shares to force it through." Marcus ran his hands through his hair. "Sophia, there's more. Mr. Chen, he's in the hospital." "What?" "Heart attack, this morning, when he got the news. He's stable, but..." Sophia felt everything inside her go cold. James Chen, the man who'd been like a father to her, was in the hospital because his life's work had been destroyed, and she'd helped by feeding information to the enemy. "I have to see him." "Sophia, wait." But she was already running. James Chen looked small and fragile in the hospital bed, hooked up to monitors that beeped steadily. His wife, Margaret, sat beside him, her face drawn with worry. "Sophia, dear," Margaret said softly, "he's been asking for you." "I'm so sorry," Sophia whispered, taking James's hand. "This is my fault." "How could this be your fault?" Margaret asked, confused. "I was seeing someone. I told him things about the company. I think he was working for them." James's eyes opened, focusing on her with effort. "Sophia, don't talk, Mr. Chen. Save your strength. Need tell you something." His voice was weak but determined. "About your parents." Sophia's breath caught. James had never talked about her biological family beyond saying they died in an accident. "Your father worked for me. Good man. But he made mistake. Industrial accident. Killed 3 people." "What are you saying?" "Blackwell family. Father, mother, son. David tried to fix it. Died trying. I've carried that guilt 23 years." Sophia's world spun. "Blackwell? The company that bought us is called Blackwell Corporation?" James's grip on her hand tightened. "Damien Blackwell, the son. He survived. I've been waiting for this day." The pieces crashed together in Sophia's mind. Damien, not Morrison. Blackwell. The son who'd lost his family because of her father's mistake. He's been planning this for 10 years, James continued weakly. Using you was probably just strategy. Sophia felt like she was drowning. Everything made sense now. Damien's knowledge about business, his expensive lifestyle, the way he'd pumped her for information about Chen Industries. It hadn't been some random corporate raider using her. It had been personal, generational revenge, and she'd fallen in love with the man destroying her family to avenge his own. Sophia, James said, his voice growing weaker, don't blame yourself. This was always my debt to pay. No, Sophia said fiercely, this isn't over. She kissed James's forehead and left the hospital with fire in her eyes. Damien Blackwell wanted to play games with her heart? Fine, but she was done being a pawn in someone else's war. It was time to fight back. Damien was in his office, trying to figure out how to undo what his board had done when his assistant announced a visitor. Sophia Chen to see you, sir. Damien's heart stopped. Send her in. When Sophia walked through his office doors, she looked like an avenging angel, beautiful, fierce, and absolutely furious. Hello, Damien, she said, her voice like ice. Or should I say, Damien Blackwell? The name on her lips confirmed his worst fears. She knew everything. Sophia, 23 years, she said, walking slowly toward his desk. That's how long you've been planning this revenge. How does it feel, knowing you destroyed a good man to settle a score with a dead one? Your father killed my family. My father died trying to fix his mistake. James Chen has carried that guilt for over 2 decades. And you used me to destroy the only family I've ever known. Damien stood up, desperate to make her understand. Sophia, everything between us was real. I tried to stop the acquisition. Liar, her voice cracked. You're a liar, and I was stupid enough to fall for it. I love you. You love revenge more. The accusation hung between them like a chasm neither could cross. Because looking at the acquisition papers on his desk, at the empire he'd built on hatred, Sophia wasn't wrong. He'd gotten everything he'd wanted, and lost the only thing that truly mattered. Sophia left Damien's office without another word, her silence more devastating than any accusation. She had work to do, damage control for a company that no longer belonged to the only family she'd ever known. The next 72 hours were a blur of emergency meetings, panicked employees, and media vultures circling the corporate carnage. Sophia threw herself into helping wherever she could, coordinating severance packages and job placement for workers who dedicated their lives to Chen Industries. You don't have to do this, Marcus said, finding her in the office at midnight, surrounded by personnel files. You're not even in HR. These people matter to me, Sophia said without looking up. Someone has to care about what happens to them. What she didn't say was that every file represented a life disrupted by her naivety, every family facing uncertainty because she'd trusted the wrong man. Damien hadn't slept since Sophia walked out of his office. He'd spent 3 days fighting his own board, trying to reverse decisions that couldn't be undone. The acquisition was complete, the integration already beginning. Sir, we need your input on the restructuring plan, Victoria said, entering his office with a stack of termination orders. Damien looked at the names, people who'd worked for Chen Industries for decades, whose only crime was loyalty to the wrong company. Fire me instead, he said quietly. Sir? You want someone to blame for this disaster? Fire me. Keep the employees. Victoria set down the papers, studying her boss with concern. Sir, you're not thinking clearly. The Chen girl has you. Her name is Sophia, Damien said dangerously, and she's the only thing that's made me think clearly in 10 years. That evening, Damien did something he hadn't done since his parents' funeral. He visited their graves. Standing in the cemetery where his vendetta had been born, he finally understood what he'd become. I got him, Mom, he whispered to the headstone. I destroyed James Chen just like I promised, and I lost myself in the process. The wind rustled through the trees, and for a moment, Damien could almost hear his mother's voice. Is revenge worth becoming someone we wouldn't recognize? Sophia was leaving the hospital after visiting James, who was recovering slowly but surely, when she saw a familiar figure in the parking garage. Damien stood beside his car, looking like he'd aged years in the past week. Sophia. His voice was rough with exhaustion. What do you want, Damien? To make this right. You can't. Sophia's voice was flat, emotionless. It's done. You won. This isn't winning. This is destroying everything that matters. Now you realize that? After James is in the hospital and hundreds of people are losing their jobs? Damien flinched. I tried to stop it. My board. Your board? You're the CEO of a multi-billion-dollar company, and you're blaming your board? Sophia's control finally cracked. Take responsibility for once in your life. You're right. Damien's admission was quiet, broken. This is my fault. All of it. I let 10 years of hate turn me into someone I don't recognize. And what? You want absolution? Forgiveness? I want to fix it. Sophia laughed bitterly. How? How do you fix destroying someone's life's work? How do you fix breaking someone's heart? How do you fix making me complicit in ruining the only family I've ever had? By giving it back. Sophia stopped, staring at him. What? Chen Industries. I'm going to give it back. Full ownership transfer to James Chen, no strings attached. You can't do that. Your board won't have a choice. I still own controlling interest in Blackwell Corporation. I can force the decision. Sophia felt hope and suspicion war in her chest. Why? What's the catch? No catch. Just let me try to be the man you thought I was, instead of the one I became. They stood in the concrete garage, two people who'd loved each other before lies and legacy destroyed everything between them. It won't change anything between us, Sophia said finally. I know. I can't forgive you for using me, for lying to me, for making me fall in love with someone who didn't exist. I know that, too. Then why? Damien looked at her, really looked at her, memorizing her face one last time. Because I love you, and love means wanting someone to be happy, even if it's not with you. Sophia felt tears threatening. This was what she'd wanted from him all along. Honesty, real emotion, the truth beneath all his walls. Damien, I'm going to fix this, Sophia, for James, for the employees, for you. Not because I expect anything in return, but because it's right. He got in his car and drove away, leaving Sophia standing alone with the first real hope she'd felt in a week. But across town, Victoria was already making calls to board members, warning them about Damien's temporary breakdown and the need for immediate action. She'd worked too hard to let a lovesick CEO destroy everything now. The war for Chen Industries was far from over, and this time the battlefield would be Damien's own boardroom. Sophia didn't know it yet, but she was about to discover that some fights required unlikely allies. And sometimes, love meant standing together against the world, even when that world included the very company you'd built your revenge upon. The final battle was about to begin. Damien called an emergency board meeting for Monday morning, armed with legal documents that would return Chen Industries to James Chen. He'd spent the weekend with his lawyers, structuring the transfer to be ironclad and immediate. You want to do what? Board member Harrison Wells looked like Damien had suggested burning money. Return Chen Industries to its original ownership? Full transfer, no compensation. Absolutely not, Victoria said sharply. The shareholders will never approve. I don't need shareholder approval. I'm invoking my majority control clause. The room erupted in angry voices. Damien sat calmly at the head of the table, watching 10 years of careful alliances crumble in real time. Damien, think about what you're saying, urged Patricia Mills, his longtime mentor. This company represents your family's legacy. My family's legacy isn't revenge. It's building something meaningful. Because of some girl? Wells's voice was incredulous. Because it's right. Victoria stood up, her expression cold. I'm sorry, Damien, but I can't let you destroy this company. Board members, I invoke Section 12 of our corporate charter, emergency removal of CEO due to compromised mental capacity. Damien's blood chilled. You can't? We can, and we are. Victoria's smile was triumphant. The acquisition stands. Chen Industries remains ours. And you, Mr. Blackwell, are no longer CEO of anything. Security entered the room as Victoria continued. Clear out your office. You have 1 hour. Sophia was at her desk in the small market research cubicle when the news broke. CNN was running a breaking story. Blackwell CEO removed in emergency board action. She watched in shock as footage showed Damien being escorted from his own building, his face stoic but his eyes devastated. Her phone rang immediately. Sophia, it's Patricia Mills from Blackwell Corporation. We need to meet. An hour later, Sophia sat across from Damien's former board in a sterile conference room, feeling like she was facing a tribunal. Miss Chen, Wells began, we're prepared to offer you a settlement. $2 million to walk away quietly and never contact Damien Blackwell again. Sophia's breath caught. $2 million would solve every problem in her life. Her student loans, her modest apartment, her mother's medical bills if she ever got sick again. Why would you pay me to avoid Damien? Because he's obsessed with you, Victoria said bluntly. He was willing to throw away a $1 billion acquisition because he thinks he's in love. That kind of liability can't be tolerated. And if I don't take your money, then we'll make your life very difficult. Your employment history, your credit rating, your future prospects, all of it can become complicated. The threat was clear. Sophia looked around the table at faces that held no warmth, no humanity. These people had destroyed Damien for trying to do the right thing. I need time to think. You have 24 hours. Sophia found Damien in the last place she expected, her neighborhood bar, the dive where they'd never gone together because it didn't match his expensive tastes. He sat alone in a corner booth, nursing a beer and looking lost. They offered me $2 million, she said, sliding into the seat across from him. Damien looked up, his eyes hollow. You should take it. Should I? Sophia, I have nothing left to offer you. No company, no money, no power to fix what I broke. I'm just a man who spent 10 years becoming someone my parents wouldn't recognize. Is that what you think I cared about? Your money? Your company? Didn't you? You were investigating corporate raiders, fighting to save your company. I was everything you stood against. Sophia studied his face, really looked at him for the first time since learning his identity. Behind the exhaustion and defeat, she saw something she'd missed before. Genuine remorse, real pain, and the same man who'd held her while she cried about her dreams. I cared about the man who brought me coffee when I worked late, who listened to my ideas like they mattered, who made me feel like I was worth loving. That man was built on lies. Was he? Or was he who you really are underneath all that rage? Damien's hands tightened around his beer bottle. I don't know anymore. I do. Sophia reached across the table, covering his hand with hers. The man I fell in love with, he's real. He's sitting right here, choosing to lose everything rather than keep something built on revenge. Sophia, your board is afraid you'll keep fighting for Chen Industries. They're afraid you'll choose love over profit. I already did. It cost me everything. Not everything. Sophia's voice was steady, sure. It didn't cost you me. Damien stared at her like she was speaking a foreign language. I used you. I lied to you. I destroyed your family's company. You did, and it broke my heart. Sophia's voice cracked slightly. But watching you lose everything trying to make it right, that shows me who you really are. I don't understand. I'm saying I forgive you, Damien. I'm saying that maybe love is about choosing each other, even when it's complicated. Even when the whole world is against us. Damien felt something shift in his chest, hope warring with disbelief. The board threatened you? Let them try. I've been poor before. I'll survive it again. But I won't survive losing you twice. Sophia, they'll destroy you. Then we'll face it together. She squeezed his hand. That's what people do when they love each other. They fight together, not alone. For the first time in a week, Damien smiled, a real smile that reached his eyes. Are you sure? Because I'm pretty much unemployed and probably unemployable after today. Good thing I still have a job in market research. I hear it pays almost enough to survive on. Damien laughed, the sound rusty but genuine. I love you, Sophia Chen. More than revenge, more than money, more than anything. I love you too, Damien Blackwell. All of you, the good, the bad, and the complicated. When he kissed her in that dive bar, it tasted like forgiveness and new beginnings, like coming home after being lost in the dark. But across town, Victoria was already setting her next plan in motion. If Damien thought losing his company was the end of it, he was wrong. Some wars didn't end until everyone was destroyed. The real battle was just beginning. Victoria's revenge was swift and brutal. By Wednesday morning, Sophia arrived at Chen Industries to find her access card deactivated and security waiting to escort her out. I'm sorry, Miss Chen, the security guard said apologetically. Orders from the new management. On what grounds? Conflict of interest. Your relationship with former Blackwell CEO creates complications. Sophia cleaned out her desk under watchful eyes, her coworkers avoiding her gaze. In 3 days, she'd gone from dedicated employee to corporate pariah. Her phone buzzed as she left the building, a text from an unknown number. This is just the beginning. Stay away from Damien Blackwell. V. Damien was in his stripped-down apartment. He'd had to sell the penthouse to pay legal fees when Sophia arrived with tears in her eyes and a cardboard box of her belongings. They fired you. It wasn't a question. Blacklisted me too. I called 3 recruitment agencies this morning. Somehow, my file is already flagged as high risk. Damien pulled her into his arms, rage building in his chest. Victoria. She's systematically destroying anyone connected to you. I won't let her do this to you. How are you going to stop her? Damien, we have no power here. No money, no influence, We have the truth. Sophia pulled back to look at him. What truth? About the original accident, about what really happened to my family. Damien's jaw was set with determination. I spent 10 years believing James Chen was the villain. What if I was wrong? What are you saying? I'm saying maybe it's time I actually investigated instead of just plotting revenge. They spent the next week digging through 23-year-old records, public documents, and newspaper archives. What they found was disturbing. Look at this, Sophia said, pointing to an old engineering report. Your father flagged safety concerns about the industrial process 3 months before the accident. Multiple memos to the city council, the EPA, the company board. Damien read over her shoulder, his blood growing cold. He was trying to stop it. And this, Sophia pulled up another document. The company that contracted the work, Meridian Industries. Guess who was on their board of directors? Victoria's father, Harrison Wells, Patricia Mills. Damien's voice was deadly quiet. The same people who just removed me from my own company. They covered it up, the whole thing, made it look like user error by your father and mine, when really they ignored safety protocols to save money. The pieces were clicking into place, creating a picture that made Damien sick. 23 years. Victoria's been planning this for 23 years. Planning what? To steal Blackwell Corporation. She needed me focused on the wrong enemy while she positioned herself to take everything. Damien stood up, pacing. The Chen acquisition, my obsession with revenge, it was all distraction. She let me destroy myself going after James while she quietly gathered board support. Sophia's phone rang. James Chen's name appeared on the screen. Mr. Chen, how are you feeling? Better, dear. Sophia, I need to see you, both of you. There's something I should have told you years ago. They met James at his home, where he looked fragile but determined. Margaret hovered nearby, worry etched on her face. Damien, James said, extending his hand, I owe you an apology. Sir, you don't. I do. I let you believe I was responsible for your family's death when I knew the truth was more complicated. James walked to a wall safe, retrieving a thick folder. Your father came to me 3 days before the accident. He'd discovered that Meridian Industries was cutting corners on safety equipment. He wanted my help exposing them. Damien's breath caught. What happened? I was a coward. Meridian was our biggest client. I told your father I needed time to think about it. James's voice broke. He died trying to fix the problem himself rather than wait for my help. And David Liu? Sophia's father was the newest engineer on the team. When your father died, David tried to implement the safety fixes alone. The system was too damaged. He died trying to save others. Sophia felt tears rolling down her cheeks. They were heroes. Yes, and Meridian made sure that truth never came out. They had investigators, lawyers, public relations experts spinning the story before the bodies were even recovered. James handed Damien the folder. Everything's in here. The real reports, the safety concerns, the cover-up. I should have released this years ago. But they would have destroyed you, Damien finished, just like they're destroying you now. Damien opened the folder, scanning documents that proved everything they'd suspected and more. Victoria's father had been Meridian's CEO. The board members now controlling his company had all profited from the cover-up. They killed our families for money, Damien said quietly. And then they used our grief against us. What do we do now? Sophia asked. Damien looked at the woman he loved, the man he'd wrongly blamed, and the evidence that could expose decades of corruption. Now we fight back, together. Damien, they have all the power. No, Damien said, his voice growing stronger. They have money and influence, but we have something more dangerous. What's that? The truth, and nothing to lose. As they sat in James Chen's living room, surrounded by evidence of a conspiracy that had shaped all their lives, Sophia realized that this was bigger than corporate rivalry or personal revenge. This was about justice. And for the first time since learning Damien's identity, she felt hope that they might actually win. The war was far from over, but now they knew who the real enemy was. The next morning, Damien and Sophia sat in a cramped coffee shop with investigative journalist Rachel Martinez, spreading 23 years of evidence across the small table. "This is incredible," Rachel said, photographing documents. "A multi-generational conspiracy involving industrial murder, corporate theft, and systematic cover-up. But I need more than old papers." "What kind of more?" Sophia asked. "Living witnesses, financial records showing current corruption, something that proves this isn't just ancient history." Damien's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Coffee shop on 5th Street. Meet me in the alley behind the building. Come alone. A friend." "I'll be right back," he told Sophia, stepping outside. In the alley, a nervous-looking man in his 50s waited in the shadows. "You're Damien Blackwell?" "Who's asking?" "Tom Stevens. I was an engineer at Meridian Industries 23 years ago." The man's hands shook as he lit a cigarette. "I saw the news about you being removed from your company. Figured it was time someone knew the truth." "What truth?" "Your father and David Liu weren't the only ones who died because of Meridian's cost-cutting." There were 3 other accidents over the next decade, all engineers who asked too many questions. Damien's blood chilled. "You have proof?" Tom handed him a flash drive. "Everything I could save before they destroyed the files. Financial records, safety reports, internal memos, including communications between Victoria Wells and her father about maintaining the cover-up." Victoria was involved even back then? She was barely out of college, but ambitious as hell. Her father was grooming her to take over the family business, which included making sure the Blackwell heir stayed focused on the wrong targets. "Why come forward now?" Tom's face hardened. "Because they killed my nephew last year. Car accident, they called it. But he had been asking questions about the old Meridian contracts. Started putting pieces together, just like you did." Back inside, Sophia was fielding calls from lawyers representing Blackwell Corporation's new management. "Miss Chen, this is Leonard Morrison from Crane Morrison & Associates. Our clients are prepared to offer you $5 million for any documents or information relating to Damien Blackwell or Chen Industries." $5 million? Sophia's voice was steady, but her hands trembled. "Along with guaranteed employment at any company of your choosing. All we need is your cooperation in a small matter. What kind of cooperation? Mr. Blackwell is clearly unstable, making wild accusations about respected business leaders. We need documentation of his erratic behavior. The implication was clear. They wanted her to betray Damien, to paint him as mentally unfit and discredit anything he might reveal. I'll need time to consider. Of course, 24 hours should be sufficient. After she hung up, Damien returned with Tom and the flash drive that would change everything. $5 million and a new life, Sophia told him quietly. All I have to do is testify that you're crazy. Are you considering it? Sophia looked at him, really looked at him. The man who'd lost everything trying to do the right thing, who'd chosen love over revenge, who was now risking his life to expose the truth. Ask me again when we've destroyed them completely. Rachel worked through the night, cross-referencing Tom's files with public records and corporate documents. By morning, she had enough for a story that would bring down not just Victoria and her board, but the entire network of corruption they'd built. This goes all the way to the governor's office, she said, showing them a web of financial connections. Campaign contributions, construction contracts, regulatory appointments. They've been buying influence for decades. How do we protect Tom? Sophia asked. If they've killed people before. Witness protection, federal investigation, full media exposure, Rachel said. Once this story breaks, killing him would only confirm everything. Damien stared at the evidence that finally proved his father's innocence. But instead of vindication, he felt hollow. I wasted 10 years hating the wrong man, he said quietly. You were manipulated by professionals, Sophia said, taking his hand. They wanted you angry and unfocused. I almost destroyed James. I did destroy us. But you didn't. We're here, we're together, and we're about to take them down. Rachel's phone rang. My editor, the story's been killed. What? Corporate pressure. Apparently, Chen Industries' current incarnation has significant advertising contracts with our parent company. The room fell silent. Even with proof, even with witnesses, the corruption ran too deep. So what now? Tom asked, fear creeping back into his voice. Damien stood up, decision crystallizing in his mind. Now we go nuclear. If they won't let the truth come out through proper channels, we'll make sure everyone hears it. How? Social media, WikiLeaks, every platform they can't control. We release everything at once, everywhere at once. That's career suicide, Rachel warned. Good thing I don't have a career left to lose. Sophia squeezed his hand. We do this together. Sophia, you don't understand the risk. I understand perfectly. These people killed our fathers, destroyed our families, and stole our lives. I'm not walking away now. As they prepared to wage war against an enemy with unlimited resources and political connections, Sophia realized that sometimes love meant choosing to fight impossible battles together, because some truths were too important to stay buried, even if revealing them cost everything. The final confrontation was about to begin, and this time they'd make sure the whole world was watching. The data dump went live at 6 a.m. on a Tuesday, simultaneously across 50 platforms. 23 years of corruption, murder, and cover-ups exploded across social media faster than any corporate damage control could contain. Hashtag Meridian murders trended worldwide within hours. Sophia sat in her tiny apartment, hitting refresh on news sites as the story spread like wildfire. Her phone hadn't stopped ringing. Reporters, lawyers, strangers offering support and death threats in equal measure. CNN wants an exclusive interview, she told Damien, who was monitoring federal response from his laptop. FBI is opening an investigation, he replied. Justice Department is reviewing everything. Stock prices for every company connected to Meridian are in free fall. By noon, Victoria Wells had been arrested on charges of conspiracy to commit murder. By evening, 6 other board members were in custody. The corruption network that had controlled their lives for decades was finally crumbling. But the victory felt hollow until James Chen called. Turn on Channel 7, he said. They watched as the news anchor reported, Chen Industries has been returned to its original owners in what sources call an unprecedented act of corporate justice. James Chen announced that the company will be restructured as an employee-owned cooperative, with former Blackwell CEO Damien Blackwell serving as chief ethics officer. Sophia stared at the screen. How? Emergency court order, Damien explained, his own voice amazed. The acquisition was ruled invalid due to criminal conspiracy. Everything gets reversed. And the ethics officer position? James offered it this morning. Fair wage, no executive perks, just honest work. Sophia felt tears building. After everything you did to him? He said redemption requires opportunity, and that you'd never forgive him if he didn't give me a chance to prove I've changed. 3 months later, Sophia stood in her new office. Not corner suite fancy, but real windows and space to think. As Chen Industries' Director of Corporate Transparency, she'd designed systems to prevent the kind of corruption that had nearly destroyed them all. Damien knocked on her doorframe. Ready for lunch? Almost. She was reviewing the quarterly transparency report, publicly available financial data, executive compensation, and ethical compliance metrics. Everything was open, everything was accountable. How's it feel? Damien asked as they walked to the small cafe they'd discovered near the office. Weird. Good weird, Sophia smiled. 6 months ago, I was a junior analyst worried about paying rent. Now I'm restructuring corporate accountability standards. And dating a former billionaire who makes less than a middle manager. Are you complaining about the pay cut? Best decision I ever made. Damien stopped walking, turning to face her. Sophia, I need to ask you something. Something in his tone made her heart skip. Okay. We've been through hell together. Lies, betrayal, corporate conspiracy, federal investigations. He pulled a small box from his pocket. I figure if we can survive all that, we can probably handle marriage. Sophia stared at the simple ring. Beautiful, but modest. Exactly what she would have chosen. Are you proposing in front of a hot dog cart? I'm proposing everywhere we've been happy. The coffee shop where we planned our rebellion, the hospital where we chose forgiveness, this street where we walk to lunch every day talking about making the world better. Sophia felt tears starting. Damien, marry me, Sophia Chen. Not because I can give you wealth or status or easy answers. Marry me because we're better together than apart. Because we fight for the same things. Because love is worth building a life on. Yes. The word came out as a whisper, then stronger. Yes, of course, yes. When he slipped the ring onto her finger, it felt like the final piece of a puzzle falling into place. 6 months later, they were married in James Chen's backyard, surrounded by Chen Industries employees, FBI agents who'd become friends, and Tom Stevens, who'd started a foundation for whistleblower protection. You know, Sophia said during their first dance, a year ago, I thought my biggest problem was paying rent. A year ago, I thought my biggest problem was destroying James Chen. And now, Damien spun her gently, now my biggest problem is figuring out how to deserve you for the rest of my life. Lucky for you, I have some ideas about that, such as, love me honestly, work for justice, never stop fighting for people who can't fight for themselves. I can do that. Good, because I'm planning to spend the next 50 years making sure you do. As they danced under string lights in the garden, surrounded by people whose lives had been changed by their choice to fight corruption together, Sophia realized that some love stories weren't about finding perfect people. They were about choosing to become better people together. And sometimes, the greatest victories came not from destroying your enemies, but from building something beautiful from the ashes of their lies. The war was over. Love had won. But more importantly, justice had won, and that victory would last generations. 2 years into their marriage, Sophia and Damien had built something neither had imagined possible, a life grounded in truth, purpose, and love that had survived every test. Chen Industries had become a model for ethical business practices, featured in Harvard Business School case studies, and consulted by companies worldwide. Sophia's transparency protocols were being adopted across entire industries. But success brought new challenges. We've got a problem, Sophia said, entering Damien's office with a thick legal folder. Harrison Wells Jr. is out of prison and filing lawsuits. Damien looked up from the employee satisfaction reports he'd been reviewing. What kind of lawsuits? Defamation, wrongful imprisonment, corporate sabotage. He's claiming we fabricated evidence against his father's generation to steal their companies. That's insane. Everything was verified by federal investigators. Doesn't matter. He's got money, lawyers, and 3 years of planning. Sophia sat across from his desk. Damien, he's not just coming after the companies. He's coming after us personally. The lawsuit was comprehensive and vicious. Wells Jr. claimed that Damien and Sophia had orchestrated an elaborate con to destroy legitimate businesses and profit from the chaos. He demanded the return of all assets, plus damages that would bankrupt them both. It's all bullshit, their lawyer, David Kim, explained, but bullshit with enough money behind it can cause real damage. He's filed in 6 different jurisdictions, trying to find a judge who'll freeze your assets while litigation proceeds. How long could this drag on? Sophia asked. Years. And that's if we win everything. That night, Sophia found Damien on their apartment balcony, staring at the city lights. Second thoughts? She asked, sliding her arms around his waist from behind. About us? Never. He leaned back against her. About dragging you into this mess? Daily, Damien said, staring out at the city lights. You didn't drag me anywhere. I chose this. I chose you, Sophia replied, sliding her arms around his waist. Justice doesn't pay legal bills, he said quietly. We'll figure it out. We always do, she assured him. But figuring it out proved harder than expected. The legal fees were mounting, and Wells Jr.'s strategy was becoming clear. Drain their resources until they couldn't fight anymore. We could settle, their lawyer David suggested during a particularly brutal strategy session. Admit no wrongdoing, pay a nominal fine, and move on. Absolutely not, Sophia said firmly. That validates his lies and undermines everything we exposed. Sophia's right, Damien agreed. We don't negotiate with corruption. Then you need to be prepared for this to get much worse before it gets better, David warned. It did get worse. Wells Jr. had hired private investigators who dug into every aspect of their lives, looking for ammunition. Sophia's adoption records were subpoenaed, Damien's mental health history was questioned, their marriage was scrutinized for signs of conspiracy. They're claiming you married me to legitimize the corporate takeover, Sophia said, reading the latest filing at their kitchen table. That our entire relationship is a business arrangement. Let them claim whatever they want. We know the truth, Damien replied. Do we? The question slipped out before Sophia could stop it. Damien looked at her sharply. What's that supposed to mean? Nothing. Sometimes I wonder if we're fighting so hard to prove we're right that we're losing sight of what actually matters, she said carefully. What matters is making sure corrupt people don't win, he insisted. What matters is us, Damien. Our marriage, our happiness, our future, Sophia countered. They stared at each other across their kitchen table, the legal documents spread between them like a battlefield. Are you saying you want to settle? Damien asked, his voice carefully controlled. I'm saying I want my husband back, the man who used to care more about us than about being right, Sophia said. I do care about us, he started. When? Between depositions and strategy meetings and press interviews? When do you care about us, Damien? She interrupted. The fight that followed was their worst since reconciling. Voices raised, accusations flying, years of suppressed fears finally erupting. You think I'm obsessed with revenge again? Damien said finally. Aren't you? Different target, same obsession, Sophia shot back. This is about justice, he protested. This is about your ego. You can't stand that someone is challenging the narrative we built, she accused. The narrative we built? Sophia, that narrative is the truth, Damien exclaimed. The truth doesn't require destroying ourselves to defend it. Sophia grabbed her coat and left, slamming the door behind her. Later that evening, she ended up at James Chen's house, tears streaming down her face as she sat in his kitchen drinking tea. Marriage is hard, James said simply, especially when external pressures try to divide you. What if he's right? What if I'm being selfish wanting to settle? Sophia asked. What if you're both right? What if justice matters and your marriage matters? James replied wisely. Those feel mutually exclusive right now, James smiled sadly. Sophia, you and Damien have faced corporate conspiracy, federal investigations, and public scrutiny. You think one angry rich boy is going to defeat you? It might defeat us, only if you let it. James reached across the table, covering her hand with his. The question isn't whether you can win this fight, it's whether you can win it together. When Sophia got home, she found Damien sitting on their couch, head in his hands. "I'm sorry," he said without looking up. "You're right, I am obsessed. I keep thinking if I don't fight hard enough, we'll lose everything we've built. And I'm sorry too. This does matter. Justice matters. I can't lose you again, even to the right fight." Damien looked up at her. "What if we could do both? Fight for justice and protect us? How? By trusting each other completely. No more solo decisions, no more protecting each other from hard truths. Everything together, or not at all." Sophia sat beside him, taking his hand. Everything together? Everything together. When they kissed, it tasted like forgiveness and renewed promises, like choosing each other all over again. The war with Wells Jr. was far from over, but now they'd fight it as partners, not as individuals carrying the burden alone. Some battles were worth risking everything for, but the greatest victory would be emerging with their love intact. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Tom Stevens called at 6 a.m. on a Tuesday, his voice shaking with excitement. "Turn on the news, Channel 7, now." Damien and Sophia huddled on their couch, watching as anchor Patricia Walsh delivered breaking news. Harrison Wells Jr., heir to the Meridian Industries fortune, was arrested early this morning on charges of witness intimidation, evidence tampering, and conspiracy to commit fraud. The story unfolded like a perfect storm of justice. Wells Jr. hadn't just been filing frivolous lawsuits, he'd been systematically threatening witnesses, bribing officials, and fabricating evidence. The FBI had been building a case for months. "How did they catch him?" Sophia breathed. Their lawyer called before the news segment ended. Wells Jr. got sloppy, started making threats over recorded phone lines, tried to bribe a federal judge. The investigation into his father's crimes never really ended. They just expanded it to include him. Within hours, all lawsuits against Damien and Sophia were withdrawn. Wells Jr.'s assets were frozen, his legal team scattered, and his credibility destroyed beyond repair. "It's over," Damien said, hardly believing it. "It's actually over." But Sophia was already looking ahead. "No, it's not over. It's beginning." 6 months later, they stood before a packed auditorium at Georgetown University, delivering the opening lecture for the Corporate Ethics and Transparency Institute, funded by settlements from the Meridian Industries cases and dedicated to preventing future corruption. "Corporate accountability isn't just about following rules," Sophia told the audience of business students, journalists, and whistleblowers. "It's about remembering that behind every financial decision are real people with real lives." Damien picked up the thread seamlessly. "My generation was taught that business is war, that winning justified any cost. But sustainable success comes from building systems that work for everyone, not just those at the top." After the lecture, they walked across campus hand in hand, processing the magnitude of what they'd built together. "You know what's crazy?" Sophia said. 3 years ago, I was answering phones and worrying about rent. Now we're training the next generation of ethical business leaders. 3 years ago, I was plotting revenge against your family. Now I can't imagine a world without you in it." They stopped walking, facing each other under the old oak trees lining the campus path. "Any regrets?" Sophia asked. "Just one, that it took me so long to realize that loving you was more important than hating anyone else. Even with everything we went through, the lies, the betrayal, the legal battles, especially because of all that, easy love doesn't teach you anything. Love that survives lies and revenge and federal investigations, that love can survive anything." That evening, they hosted a dinner party in their new house, not mansion-sized, but spacious enough for the family they were building. James and Margaret Chen sat at one end of the table, Tom Stevens and his wife at the other. Rachel Martinez was there with her Pulitzer Prize for the Meridian Industries exposé. Even David Kim had come with his family. "A toast," James said, raising his wine glass, "to Sophia and Damien, who proved that love is stronger than revenge and truth is more powerful than corruption." "To second chances," Margaret added. "To justice," said Tom. "To choosing to right battles," Rachel chimed in. Damien stood, pulling Sophia up with him. "To all of that, but mostly to the woman who taught me that the best victory isn't destroying your enemies, it's building something so beautiful that their hatred can't touch it." As glasses clanked around the table, Sophia felt the weight of the journey that had brought them here. From a waiting room where she'd been desperate for any job, to a mansion where she'd fallen for a lie, to a federal courthouse where they'd testified against corruption, to this table surrounded by people whose lives had been changed by their choice to fight for justice together. "What are you thinking about?" Damien asked quietly as their guests chatted around them. "Happy endings," Sophia said. "How they're not really endings at all. They're beginnings." Beginning of what? Everything. The institute, the foundation, the consulting firm we talked about starting, maybe even... She paused, smiling mysteriously. Maybe even what? Kids, someday, teaching them that love means fighting for what's right, even when it's hard. Damien's face lit up with wonder and joy. "Really? Really? But first, we finish what we started. Make sure the next generation never has to go through what we did." "Deal. Though I have to say, going through hell with you was worth it to end up here." Smooth talker. It worked once. It works every day. When Damien kissed her in front of their chosen family, it tasted like promises kept and futures built on truth, like love that had been tested by fire and emerged stronger than ever. Later, as they cleaned up together in comfortable silence, Sophia realized that fairy tales weren't about perfect people finding perfect love. They were about real people choosing to love imperfectly but completely, building something beautiful from the ashes of their mistakes. The end. True love stories begin with deception and end with truth. Some empires are built on revenge and rebuilt on justice. But the greatest victories come when two people choose each other not despite their scars, but because of them, and together they change the world. True love isn't perfect love. It's love that chooses to fight for justice, forgiveness, and each other, no matter the cost.
Your heart knows the way. Subscribe and follow the beauty.